We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. On second day of ongoing Raisina Dialogue, discussions to shift towards global security challenges and technological competition. Experts to discuss defense production gaps between Western countries. US-Israeli strikes on Iran continue on the 7th day, while President Trump says Iran calling US about a deal. Nepal concluded voting in its first major election with preliminary turnout around 60%, counting to begin after ballot collection. India secured a spot in T20 World Cup finale after a thrilling 7-run victory over England at Mumbai's Wankhede Stadium. And on to the details now. The ongoing Raisina Dialogue, bringing together global leaders, policymakers and technology experts to deliberate on key geopolitical and economic challenges. On day 2 of Raisina Dialogue, leaders from across the globe to attend the conference. The dialogue will focus on how technological disruptions, strategic competition and economic security are reshaping global politics. This year's Raisina Dialogue returns with a theme that captures the moment we find ourselves in: Samskara, assertion, accommodation, advancement. Samskara is inheritance of identity that enables civilizations to assert who they are, accommodate the difference and advance through refinement. And on Thursday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Raisina Dialogue along with the President of Finland. Global leaders, policymakers and strategic experts from across the world are taking part in discussions on pressing global challenges.
The Raisina Dialogue, India's premier forum on geopolitics and global strategy, began in New Delhi with leaders and experts from across the world gathering to discuss the evolving global order. The conference, hosted by the Ministry of External Affairs and the Observer Research Foundation, has over the years emerged as one of the most influential platforms for dialogue on global security, economy, and diplomacy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the event along with the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb. In his inaugural address, the President of Finland spoke about global cooperation and the need for nations to work together in an increasingly complex geopolitical environment, and extended support for India's UNSC membership.
The voices of the global south must be heard much louder than today. The obvious place to start is the UN Security Council. I have proposed 2 permanent seats for Asia, 2 for Africa, and 1 for Latin America. And let me be clear, India should have a permanent seat in the UN Security Council.
The Raisina Dialogue has steadily grown into a major global platform, often compared with forums like the Munich Security Conference, reflecting India's rising voice in global geopolitics. As the world navigates conflicts, technological disruptions, and economic uncertainty, India is positioning itself as a key voice, shaping conversations on global governance and strategic cooperation. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar highlighted India's expanding diplomatic engagement and its role in shaping a more balanced and inclusive global order.
Our discussions over the next few days will be about new capabilities, military, economic, energy, human resources, and above all, technology. AI particularly awaits us.
For India, the conference also reflects the country's growing role as a global power, shaping conversations and building partnerships in an increasingly multipolar world. With leaders from dozens of countries participating, the dialogue is expected to host a wide range of discussions over the coming days on the future of global governance and strategic stability. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, the Finnish President Alexander Stubb's state visit to India highlights the deepening strategic partnership between the two nations. The leader will be visiting Mumbai, where he will interact with Indian business leaders and attend an India-Finland business event. Our next report has more details.
Finnish President Alexander Stubb is on a state visit to India. This marks his first trip to the country as president. He is accompanied by a high-level delegation of ministers, officials and business leaders. President Stubb held bilateral talks with PM Modi at Hyderabad House in New Delhi, focusing on expanding cooperation in digitalization, sustainability, clean energy, quantum computing, semiconductors, defense and space. India and Finland signed 3 key MOUs during the visit to enhance bilateral cooperation, covering environmental cooperation, migration and mobility partnership, and statistics cooperation. These agreements pave the way for collaboration in areas like AI, 6G, and critical minerals.
ये पार्टनरशिप AI से लेकर 6G टेलीकॉम तक, क्लीन एनर्जी से लेकर क्वांटम कंप्यूटिंग तक, कई हाईटेक क्षेत्रों में हमारे सहयोग को गति और ऊर्जा देगा। साथ ही डिफेंस, स्पेस, सेमीकंडक्टर और क्रिटिकल मिनरल जैसे की सेक्टर्स में भी साझेदारी और गहरी बढ़ेगी।
PM Modi emphasized India's commitment to peaceful resolutions amid global tensions. He highlighted shared democratic values driving the new strategic partnership between India and Europe.
आज विश्व एक अस्थिरता और अनिश्चितता के दौर से गुजर रहा है। यूक्रेन से लेकर वेस्ट एशिया तक दुनिया के कई हिस्से उसमें संघर्ष की स्थिति बनी हुई है। ऐसे ग्लोबल एनवायरनमेंट में भारत और यूरोप दुनिया की 2 बड़ी डिप्लोमेटिक पावर्स अपने संबंधों के सुनहरे दौर में प्रवेश कर रहे हैं।
PM Modi said the upcoming India-EU free trade agreement would enhance trade and technology ties and called for deeper Arctic research collaboration. President Stubb recounted his last visit to India and hailed the partnership as important given the current geoeconomics and India's economic heft.
Salute your diplomatic skills when you say that we stand here as 2 big democracies. There is one big and one slightly smaller, but I think the key message is that we share values. I would also like to congratulate you for your leadership. My last visit to India was actually in 2013 in my capacity as Minister of Trade. And the change that I just see on the streets of New Delhi and that I will most probably see in Mumbai in a couple of days is palpable. This is an economic miracle that we're witnessing, and I wish you all the best.
President Stubb's visit signals a maturing India-Finland partnership, transforming long-standing goodwill into a strategic alliance amid shifting geopolitics. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, India and Finland have reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening bilateral relations, with both sides agreeing to double bilateral trade by 2030. Speaking at a press briefing following the recent visit of the Finnish President, Secretary West in the Ministry of External Affairs, C.B. George, said the relationship between the two countries has grown steadily over the decades. He noted that the partnership has evolved into one driven by innovation and technology, reflecting shared priorities in emerging sectors and economic cooperation.
India and Finland enjoy warm and friendly relationship. Over the decades, our relationship has evolved into a forward-looking, innovation and technology-driven partnership. Finnish companies have strong presence in India in areas such as telecommunications, digital solutions, clean energy, and smart manufacturing. Bilateral trade in goods and services is close to $3 billion. Trade and investment are expected to expand further with the coming in force of the India-EU Free Trade Agreement. In this respect, we have also agreed to double the trade by 2030.
Well, meanwhile, Secretary George also announced that India and Finland will co-host the World Circular Economy Forum, highlighting the growing collaboration between the two nations in sustainability initiatives.
Finland's globally recognized expertise in clean technologies, renewable energy, and sustainable urban solutions makes it a natural partner for India. India and Finland will also be co-hosting the World Circular Economy Forum in India later this year. During the visit, both sides have reviewed and renewed the MOU on environmental cooperation to further the collaboration on sustainability and circular economy, including bioenergy and waste-to-energy solutions, power storage, green hydrogen, as well as wind, solar, and small hydropower.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the post-budget webinar on the theme Agriculture and Rural Transformation at 11:15 a.m. IST via video conferencing. Under this theme, 8 different webinar sessions are being held covering 4 major sectors. Those are agriculture, animal husbandry and dairying, fisheries, rural livelihoods. Well, the post-budget webinar will focus on promoting high-value agriculture by unlocking the potential of crops. It will also deliberate on the opportunities offered by Bharat Vistar, the AI-powered digital public infrastructure for agriculture. The sessions will also deliberate upon private sector investment and entrepreneurship in the animal husbandry value chain, integrated development of reservoirs and Amrit Sarovars for fisheries, strengthening coastal fisheries value chains, and expanding market access for products made by rural women entrepreneurs through self-help entrepreneurs, marketing avenues for rural transformation. Well, Nepal concluded voting with 60% of around 19 million voters in Nepal turned out at different polling stations countrywide to elect a new legislature which will decide who heads the next government. Well, the expectations of political shift in Nepal have been sky high since the ouster of the KP Sharma Oli government in September last year as a result of a youth-led protest which has been seeking a generational shift from the old guard which has dominated the nation's politics for nearly 2 decades now.
Voters across Nepal turned out in significant numbers as the country held its latest elections with around 60% voter turnout reported nationwide. Officials say the voting was largely peaceful as citizens cast their ballots to decide the country's next political leadership. Coming after the youth-led protests in September last year, these elections are being viewed by many as historic. Polling began at 7 a.m. and continued until 5 p.m. with long queues seen at several polling stations across the country. Voters turned out in large numbers to exercise their franchise with high expectations, particularly the youth, who are considered a decisive factor in these polls.
I'm feeling really excited, like so much eager to know the results and everything. People are in the ministry now, and then Prime Minister is more educated now because we really didn't have anyone educated as much as now. There are really good candidates, and I hope they all win and make our country great.
We are finally here in election day to vote, and we voted for the best candidate as we thought. And so I really want as everyone wants to minimize the corruptions, so we can't hope for the sudden changes, but least thing they can do is less corruption. And the next thing is development in education and hospital area.
While many expressed happiness after casting their votes, they also said the next government must focus on tackling corruption and creating more opportunities for young people.
My expectation from the upcoming government, whoever comes to power, is basically we need a little bit of stability in the country.
With Nepal following a mixed electoral system, each voter was given 2 ballot papers, one for the first past the post system and another for proportional representation. Security arrangements were tight across the country with additional security personnel deployed to ensure the elections remained safe and peaceful. Results for the first past the post ballots are expected within 24 hours, while the proportional representation results will take longer to be finalized. These crucial elections are expected to shape the political direction of Nepal in the coming years and determine how the country responds to the demands for reform voiced by its citizens. Report by Siddharth Bharadwaj for DD India.
And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. UN very worried over global energy supply as rising prices hampering operations and aid. Trump says US could turn focus to Cuba after Iran war ends. And US stocks slide as Middle East conflict pushes oil to 2024 high, raising inflation fears.
Nature is sounding the alarm, and when our ecosystems are under pressure, our lives are impacted too. In today's episode, we take a look at how these two are coming together to help us adapt and respond to a changing world.
When you conduct agriculture with Kadai cattle, you don't need to provide any extra materials or any other natural inputs to that field.
The AI does not see animals in the pictures, which then have to be found by humans. But also there are certain species, especially rare species, where we don't have a lot of pictures to train the AI, that the AI then cannot classify in turn.
Thanks to Santosh's information and awareness classes, that myth has disappeared. Now if we encounter a dangerous snake like a cobra, we immediately call Santosh to perform a rescue.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and moving on to the latest development in US-Israel and Iran conflict. President Donald Trump hints that Tehran was reaching out to the United States about making a deal amid US and Israeli strikes on Iran. Trump touted the US military actions in Iran, saying they were destroying Tehran's missile and drone capability and that their navy is gone 24 ships in 3 days, as he called on Iranian diplomats to request asylum and help shape a better country. An Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that Iran has not asked for a ceasefire, rejecting negotiations with the US. Araghchi said his country was prepared for any ground invasion, warning that such a move would spell disaster for the country's enemies. Araghchi said, "We are waiting for them," as the United States and Israel kept up strikes on Iran. Tehran has said it entered negotiations with Washington despite doubts about US intentions, but was attacked before the agreed timeline for talks concluded. The US has said the goal of its current military engagement with Iran is a regional transition that ensures West Asia no longer poses a global security threat. Well, the U.S. House of Representatives rejected an effort on Thursday to stop President Donald Trump's war on Iran and require that any hostilities against Iran be authorized by Congress, backing the Republican president's military campaign on the 6th day of the expanding conflict. The vote was 219 to 212 in the House, where Trump's fellow Republicans control a narrow majority of seats. 2 Republicans voted in favor of the resolution and 4 Democrats voted against it. Opponents accused Democrats of taking the issue to a vote only because they oppose Trump, putting Americans at increased risk. Just before the resolution vote, House members from both the parties overwhelmingly passed a measure reaffirming Iran remains the largest state sponsor of terrorism. The vote would not have stopped the conflict even if the House had voted yes. To go into effect, the resolution would also have had to pass the Senate and garner the 2/3 majorities needed to override Trump's expected veto. Well, the United States has sunk more than 30 Iranian ships during the ongoing war, while ballistic missile and drone attacks by Tehran's forces are down substantially. Admiral Brad Cooper, who is the head of the Central Command, which is responsible for U.S. forces in the Middle East, said Iranian ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90% since day one. Drone attacks have decreased by 83% since day one. Destroying Iran's ballistic missile capabilities and its navy are two of Washington's main stated goals for the mission against Iran, which the United States has dubbed Operation Epic Fury.
Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships. And in just the last few hours, we hit an Iranian drone carrier ship, roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. And as we speak, it's on fire.
While U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has said that Iran was making a mistake if it believed that the United States could not sustain the ongoing war, adding that Washington had just begun to fight.
Iran is hoping that we cannot sustain this, which is a really bad miscalculation for the IRGC in Iran. If you think you've seen something, just wait. The amount of combat power that's still flowing, that's still coming, that will be able to project over Iran is a multiples of what it currently is right now when you add up our capabilities and those of the Israeli Defense Forces.
While in its latest updates, Iran's Israeli army said that its military has destroyed more than 60% of Iranian ballistic missile launchers in the opening phase of its campaign in Tehran.
We have neutralized and destroyed more than 60% of ballistic missile launchers, a highly significant achievement that reduces harm to the home front and saves many lives. I'm in continuous contact with American counterparts, including the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff of the United States, General Dan Kane, and the commander of CENTCOM, Admiral Brad Cooper. We are fighting based on shared interests and values. In this war, shoulder to shoulder, they are true friends.
Well, the U.S. State Department said that it is actively assisting Americans to leave the Middle East. If they wish to, request emergency assistance +1 202 501 4444 issued. Also, the United States has ordered the evacuation of its embassy in Kuwait. The evacuation is to take place overnight, Thursday into Friday, and embassy staff have been ordered to destroy information and wipe classified servers. The evacuation order comes as Kuwait's army says its air defenses repelled a missile attack that penetrated the country's airspace. Well, Iran pressed attacks across the Gulf for the 6th day. An Iranian missile strike sparked a blaze at Bahrain's main state-owned oil refinery. Bahrain also said that Iran had also targeted 2 hotels and a residential building in the capital, Manama. The United Kingdom is temporarily withdrawing some staff and their dependents from its Bahrain embassy. Well, Sri Lanka started to offload 208 crew members from a second Iranian vessel off its coast on Thursday, a day after 87 people were killed and several others were still missing after a U.S. submarine strike on an Iranian warship in the same region. In a news briefing in Colombo, Sri Lankan President Anurakkumara Dissanayake said that Sri Lanka decided to assist the Iranian vessel, which was near the port of Colombo, after detailed discussions with all parties. Well, the first ship, Iris Dana, was sunk on March 4th, thousands of miles from the Gulf, where U.S. and Israeli forces are striking Iran, and Tehran is retaliating with missile and drone attacks. Meanwhile, Australian Prime Minister informed that 3 Australian military personnel were on board an American submarine that sank an Iranian Navy ship off Sri Lanka this week. Anthony Albanese said that the personnel were on board the submarine as part of training arrangements under AUKUS, a multi-decade defense pact with Britain and the United States. Also, the United Nations expressed concern over the global energy supply on Thursday, describing the situation as very, very worried. UN spokesperson Stephen Dujarric warned that rising energy prices are directly hindering UN operations and humanitarian aid. US President Donald Trump suggested Washington could shift its focus to Cuba after the Iran conflict, saying it would be just a question of time once the ongoing war in the West Asia concludes. Also, Trump, speaking at an event with the Inter Miami soccer team at the White House, said Cuba wants to make a deal so badly. Trump also said the situation in Venezuela had been stabilized, praising acting President Delcy Rodriguez and saying the United States was importing Venezuelan oil that was being refined in places such as Houston before revenue was returned to the country. And in business news, U.S. stocks fell on Thursday as the six-day Middle East conflict drove up oil prices, fueling inflation fears and doubts about potential Federal Reserve interest rate cuts. Expansion of the conflict to more countries fed fears of disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. This lifted U.S. crude prices about 8.5% to $81 per barrel, the highest since July 2024. Global benchmark Brent crude rose 4.9% to $85.41. Traders worry a prolonged interruption could feed inflation and slow economic growth. Well, the US dollar also held broadly steady in early Asian trade on Friday and was poised for its steepest weekly gain in more than a year. The euro and yen remained on the back foot as the crisis drove oil prices ever higher, spurring inflation risk in economies dependent on energy imports and upending expectations for policy by the Federal Reserve and other central banks. And in sports news, India defeated England by 7 runs in the semi-final of the ICC T20 World Cup 2026. The co-host will face New Zealand in the finals on March 8th at the Narendra Modi Stadium. Chasing 254 runs, the visitors were in the game till the end, but the mammoth target proved too much for them. Although Jacob Bethel scored 100, Jasprit Bumrah and Hardik Pandya's brilliance with the ball took India to the success. All right, that's all for this edition of DT India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DT India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DT India. I'm Nipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DT India Live.